alcohol and anxiety. If you drink too much, you'll probably feel some anxiety. I would say anxiety was my main issue when I was drinking. The mental health side of it, rather than the physical side of it, until the end, of course, or near the end. My anxiety started kicking when I was, I'd say, mid-30s. I was working in central London, and quite a long travel in. I lived out in Essex and Epping. I think it was about 30 odd miles, but I used to get the underground most of the time. And over time, getting the underground became more problematic for me. I used to stand there thinking, wait for the train, because it was overground where I got on. And it was pretty quiet, the train, but I used to know it would get more and more full with each stop in towards the centre, because I used to commute to Oxford Circus, which is always busy, isn't it, if you know London. If you don't, it's always manic. And I used to really feel quite nervous on the train when I'd had a few drinks. I'm not about heavy drinking here, I'm just talking about a few. And the anxiety levels used to raise the more I'd had to drink, obviously. And I worked shifts, and I used to get the early train. I think the early train was left at 5:05. We used to start at 6:30. It would get me to Oxford Circus at 6:05, and most would run down, so I went to the police, get changed on duty sort of thing. And the anxiety levels travelling were high, very high. But they also started the night before, and I think, how am I going to be all right next day? All this hard work, planning and stuff just to get to work, because the anxiety stopped me functioning more than anything, not the physical side. It was the mental side, the anxiety. I'm so anxious about things. Once I got to work, I just got in my uniform and I was all right. So pulled myself together. I always fancied to drink after. Sometimes I did in the earlies, but as time went on, I used to drink after most shifts. And my anxiety would be worse every day, not every day, but it crept up on me. As I already talked about physical symptoms, but the anxiety for me was way on top of the other problems that I had. And as time went on, I felt myself sort of detached, and sort of shake a little bit. Not shake for withdrawal. I was worried about the underground train. At the time, there was been the odd bombing in London, unfortunately. There were security alerts and things. I felt so nervous on the train, and I decided, it was taking me an hour to get in. I decided to start and get the train from Epping to one of the other overground stations. I wasn't in the tunnel, and I used to get out there and walk and get a bus. So an hour's journey was then taking me 3 hours to get to work. All this caused by the anxiety of travel, you see. So I was set off as early as I could. I wouldn't sleep the night before, you see, very well. The only time I actually slept reasonably well, I mean, you don't sleep well with drink anyway, but the only time I could relax when I had days off. So I used to get the train from Epping into one of the overground stations, late or somewhere, get off there and get a bus. I used to get 2 buses into work. So I was leaving, I was travelling 6 hours a day when I should have been travelling 2. All this because I was so nervous about sitting in the train. But other aspects of it came into, just daily life and driving and things. I didn't feel very well driving, to be honest. Some of the time when I had a day off, I had a lot to drink. The more you have to drink, the more anxiety you're going to get. Anxiety is a massive problem. Some people call the whole withdrawal thing now hangxiety, with hangover and anxiety. But personally speaking, this anxiousness, as it was, caused me more issues. I used to go into shops and things and feel, I don't like crowds anymore. From being a high functioning guy that I was, I sort of crumbled quite quickly with this. It's a mental health problem, isn't it? The anxiety. It's caused by the brain when you withdraw from alcohol, the GABA receptors or something, I think. Plus you get low blood sugar and lack of nutrition. All these things combine to make you feel weak, to make you feel shaky, to make you feel nauseous. It's a combination of things, you see. And you'll feel it creeping up on you, and this is the time you need to get some help. But other times I used to go on holiday and I was anxious about flying, so I had to have a drink when I was flying. And then I used to put more pressure on my wife, ex-wife, to drive more. She had to drive, and all this caused domestic issues. Physically I was all right, but mentally I was shot, to be honest. And it really pulled me down in everything I did, in my work, in my home life, and the activities I could do with my daughter. I felt quite restricted by it, what I'm trying to say. If you can't just get on a flight. I mean, at one time in the early 90s, I couldn't fly, even with drink, so we used to go down to Northern Italy a lot, and we used to take the car and do Eurocamp, a big fantasy holiday of driving through the Swiss mountains, which we did, but I was always had a drink, and the pressure was on her to drive all the time. But it's obviously caused massive issues in the marriage, which compounded itself into me drinking more. So I'd have this big Land Rover Discovery full of drink, and I'd be drinking in the passenger seat. I used to drive for a little while and just say, oh, I don't feel too well. And I'd pull over and I used to crack a couple of bottles open and I'd be all right. I didn't drink and drive, I used to just sit in the passenger seat. Anyway, one holiday, I'd had quite a lot of drink over the 3 weeks we were away, and I couldn't face driving, obviously. It was a huge rouse. And I actually couldn't sit in the front seat of the car. I went through Milan, so really fast motorways, and I felt as though I was going to open the car door and dive out. Really bizarre feeling. So you're going to have to stop, pull over at some service station in Italy, and I got into the back seat with my daughter next to me in the car seat. What's all that about? I used to drive all over the place. I'm fine now. I've stopped drinking. I've got no anxiety whatsoever. I wouldn't be doing this if I had. So it got to the point where I was actually having to drive or be chauffeured around, if that makes sense. Or because the anxiety level had just gone through the roof. And when we used to come to see parents, my dad would say, why are you not driving? You've been drinking. The whole thing was hard work. It was full time trying to tell lies and hide beers and all this sort of thing. And he always used to say to me, you're not the same guy as you used to be, mate. When you were younger, what's the problem? And he said, there's a drink, it is too much. We cut down, taper off, all these sort of things. And I couldn't do it, you know. I mean, alcohol now, alcoholism is a disease, and it's alcohol use disorder now. And it really screwed my life up, to be honest. And when I got sober, for the 8 years I did it, it was great. When I went back on it again, 2014, my anxiety came back. But came back like a train, and then the physical issues came in. So if you're feeling any anxiety, any thoughts of even self-harm in some ways, you know, what was I thinking about jumping out of the car for? I mean, it never happened. I never reached for the car door, but the same on the flight. I'm thinking before we take off, you know, the doors there. I used to always get tickets for the flight in the middle of the plane. I would never sit near a door. Now, because I'm so tall, I sit right at the front with the extra legroom, so I'm near the door. So it's all changed, and I look back now, I think the anxiety was number one for me. Everyone's different, of course, but watch that creeping up, because one of the for me, it was a massive warning sign. I didn't know about it because I used to read about all the issues alcoholics had, you know, stumbling over, falling over, walking into the road, liver disease, heart problems, pancreatitis, and all this sort of thing. But very little was ever mentioned about the anxiety levels. And when I've spoken to people, that's one of the major things, but it's not spoken about a lot, to be fair. If you look at all the symptoms of alcoholism, you'll find them mainly physical. Anxiety should be really near the top. And if you do feel any of these, or you do feel any sort of anxiety at all, after you've been drinking, you won't when you're drinking, because it takes the anxiety away, doesn't it? But it comes back twice or thrice as heavy. And if you've been off the drink for a while, then when you relapse, the anxiety will come back 100-fold. Trust me, because I've been through it all. I'm not a doctor, but I'm here to give you advice and help you. If you benefit from the channel, then please subscribe and leave me any comments. And if you want me to cover a specific topic, then also leave me a comment, and I'll speak to you all very soon.